A German shepherd with a twisted leg trembling under the weight of every whisper in the crowd. Not a single hand went up. Not one. They called him broken, unfixable, a burden. The auctioneer was seconds from ending it all until a man no one had noticed quietly raised his hand. No words, no hesitation. Just one simple gesture that would set off a chain of events no one could have imagined. What was it about this dog that pulled a stranger from the shadows? And what secret did that man carry that made him walk straight into the pain everyone else ran from? This story will take you deeper than you expect, a journey of loyalty, redemption, and a bond that might just change how you see the world. But before we dive in, like this video and let us know in the comments, where are you watching from? We'd love to hear from you. The Billings livestock auction wasn't the kind of place you went looking for grace. Between the haze of cattle dust, the clang of metal gates, and the relentless shouts of buyers sizing up working stock, there was barely room to breathe, let alone feel. But that day, something shifted. The noise stilled into silence. It wasn't the loudest voice or the biggest bull. It was the dog. He limped in through the side gate like a shadow, trying to remember how to walk in the light. A male German shepherd, mud-stained, fur mottled with old wounds, one hind leg dragged behind him like it had given up months ago. His ribs peeked through patchy fur, and a faded chain scar wrapped around his neck like a memory he couldn't shake. He didn't bark, he didn't beg. He just stood there, shaking slightly, but holding his ground, as if he knew his fate was about to be sealed in front of strangers who didn't care to know his name. The auctioneer, usually thunderous with energy, stumbled over his pitch. A few mutters scattered through the barn. "That one's done for." "He's not worth the feed." Probably bit someone. No bids, not even a glance of pity. The silence around him didn't come from awe. It came from indifference. He wasn't a dog to them. He was a burden with a heartbeat. Just as the auctioneer started to move on, tapping his gavel toward the gate to have the dog dealt with, a hand lifted quietly in the back. It didn't shout. It didn't wave. It just rose, calm and firm, like it had been waiting for this exact moment. Heads turned. Whispers followed. No one recognized the man. He wore a worn-out leather jacket that had seen more miles than most trucks in the yard, boots caked with Montana mud, his hair silver at the sides. A faded scar ran down his jawline, like a map leading back to somewhere he never talked about. His name wasn't announced, his voice wasn't heard, but the way he nodded, once, just once, carried more weight than any offer of cash. The gavel dropped. Sold. People blinked, confused. Why would someone like that want a dog like that? Was it pity? A mistake? Or something they'd never understand? The man walked slowly down the aisle. He didn't hesitate, didn't flinch when the dog raised his head. The German shepherd stared, legs wobbling, but something in those amber eyes flickered like a dying ember catching the wind. When the man knelt beside him, he didn't reach to grab or pull. He simply placed a hand, open and patient, on the dog's shoulder. What happened next? No one expected. The dog moved closer, barely. But he leaned into that touch as if it were the first real contact he'd had in years. He didn't growl. He didn't cry. He just rested his weight against the man's leg and breathed. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. But everyone felt it. It was like watching two broken things remember how to hold each other together. Someone recorded it on their phone. The footage didn't show much, just a stranger and a dog, still and silent in the chaos of an auction yard. But it was enough to go viral. What it didn't show was the reason behind that raised hand, the story hidden in the man's eyes, and what the dog would do in the days ahead would leave everyone questioning. How much pain does it take to finally bring someone home? It was irresistible, as if something or someone had once been buried there. Not deep, not marked, just erased. Elijah dropped to one knee and touched the ground. Cold, damp, still. "Is this it?" he whispered, barely loud enough to be real. The dog didn't bark, didn't whimper. He just let out a slow, heavy breath and sat beside him. The air thickened. Elijah closed his eyes for a long moment, remembering things he had spent years trying to forget. Old jobs, fast cash, a certain barn with sounds no one ever spoke of again. But it wasn't just guilt. It was something worse. Complicity. He hadn't caused it, but he'd been there. He'd heard things, and he'd walked away. The dog leaned gently against Elijah's shoulder, not pressing, just being. And that small, quiet contact carried the weight of a forgiveness Elijah didn't think he deserved. They sat there for a long time, man and dog, side by side, in the middle of a field filled with ghosts. But the silence didn't last. As they walked back to the truck, a flicker of movement near the barn caught Elijah's eye, a shape, quick, ducking behind the rotted siding. Someone had been watching. He stepped forward, but Rook growled, low and guttural, halting him in place. Whoever it was, they didn't come out again, and Elijah didn't chase. Instead, he opened the glove box, pulled out a folded notepad, and wrote 3 words, "It's not over." The drive back was even quieter, but the silence wasn't empty anymore. It buzzed with urgency. This wasn't just about Rook's past. It was about Elijah's own accountability and the unfinished business buried in the shadows of forgotten barns and burned paper trails. Back at the cabin, Elijah placed the muddy notepad on the table and began gathering old contacts. Names he hadn't spoken aloud in years. Ranchers, auctioneers, people who knew how the underworld worked behind the livestock industry's clean facade. As the fire crackled behind him, Rook curled on the rug, this time not facing the door, but Elijah. Because now they weren't just 2 survivors. They were a unit with a mission. And the truth was no longer buried. Elijah didn't waste time. The very next morning, after barely a few sips of bitter coffee, he loaded the dog into the pickup and headed east, straight toward Bozeman. The back of his mind buzzed with fragments from the night before. That shadow at the ranch, the old fence posts that seemed to hide a graveyard's worth of secrets. But it was the dog that haunted him more. The way he had whimpered near the shallow earth, the way he had stared at Elijah like he knew everything. Bozeman was an hour out. The landscape grew flatter, more open. Elijah's grip on the wheel tightened with every passing mile. He hadn't been to this vet clinic in years, not since he and Alina Merrick had stopped talking after, well, a lot of silence. But if anyone knew how to read deeper than the wounds, it was her. The moment Elijah stepped through the door, the receptionist stiffened. "Dr. Merrick," she called out quickly, without even asking his name, and then there she was, Alina. Sleeves rolled, eyes alert, wiping her hands with a stained cloth. She didn't smile, didn't ask why he was there. Her gaze dropped immediately to the dog. Rook limped behind Elijah, then sat. Barely, his body tense, eyes flicking between the 2 of them like he was reading every moment as code. Alina approached slowly, crouched without a word, and placed a hand near the dog's neck. He didn't flinch. That, more than anything, told her something had changed. "Elijah," she finally said, standing back up, "let's take a look." Inside the sterile exam room, the mood shifted. The dog remained calm, letting her lift his paw, run her hands along his rib cage. But when she gently parted the fur along his flank, she froze. "These aren't from a fence," she muttered. "These are intentional." Elijah's heart slowed in his chest. "What do you mean?" Alina didn't look at him. She focused on the scan. "Old scar tissue, burn rings." She moved to his chest, found another. "This pattern," she began again, "is usually from shock prods." Silence fell. Heavy shock prods. Elijah swallowed hard. His hands curled on his knees. He remembered the stories, Rumors on backcountry ranches about breaking aggressive dogs, making them fear, obey, or worse, turn violent for sport. Alina stepped back from the table and exhaled. He's not just abused, he's trained to survive something. No living thing should be made to survive. Then she pulled up a scan. There's a chip, and it changed everything. They both leaned in as the monitor blinked, pulling records from a dusty digital trail. When the name popped up, Elijah didn't breathe. Alina hesitated before reading it aloud. The dog had once been registered under a livestock holding facility, one Elijah knew all too well. Yellowstone County. Closed 5 years ago, tied to a man who rarely showed his face but always got what he wanted. Alina's voice broke as she read the final line. Owner of record, Everett Roar. Elijah sat back, stunned. The name hit him like a freight train. Roar. The man behind the auctions. The man Elijah had once worked for when his own life had gone dark. The man whose operation Elijah had tried to forget. But the dog hadn't forgotten. Rook's eyes didn't blink. He just turned his head slightly, watching Elijah. Quiet as ever, as if to say, you already knew. Alina didn't speak again. She could see Elijah was unraveling quietly in the corner. He stood up slowly, walked to the door, then stopped. Keep the scan, he said, and don't erase anything. Outside, the wind had picked up. Elijah stood by the truck, eyes closed, whispering something only the dog could hear, a name, a place, and a promise. Because now it wasn't just about rescuing the dog from his past. It was about making sure no other soul, two-legged or four, was ever trapped under that same weight again. If this tale moved you, if you felt the tension, the heartbreak, and the triumph, please support our channel by hitting the like button and subscribing. Your support means the world to us and helps us bring more thrilling, emotional, and inspiring stories your way. Leave a comment below and let us know what you think. Do you believe dogs have an extraordinary sixth sense? Share your thoughts and personal stories with us. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.